Okay, testing, 1, 2, 3. Okay, mic is working. Boy, this is the first time that I have actually been in here in a while. Hello, everybody. I am the professor, and it has been a good long while since I have actually been on stream and actually talked to you folks about things. Interesting show today. One thing, this show is now going to be streamed live from now on. I was pre-recording this before and everything. I was pre-recording originally, but I decided, you know what, I'd rather talk off the cuff. This is all unscripted, everything. What I'm saying to you, what I'm telling you is completely me. All me. And no filters, no pre-writing everything, because I suck at writing scripts. I can write books, but I can't write scripts, which is weird. That is unusual. Today's show, going to focus on G4 and maybe some other topics, but G4 is going to be the main topic because I was a big fan of G4 when it first came out on TV many moons ago. And I think there was someone in the gaming MeWe group that said that G4 was no longer relevant to that effect. And I have to pretty much agree with them. Not just because G4 is, now defunct once again. This is you can't see it, that's my camera view. G4 is defunct once again, and I'm not going to get into the whole reasons why, the whole politics behind what Frosk did, because I don't want to talk about that idiot. I want to talk about just G4 itself and why it's no longer relevant and why it was important back in the day. So let's talk. Let's change our perspective here. All right. So, G4. Why was it so important back in the day? Well, to begin with that, let's talk about where G4 came from originally. G4 came from a couple of things. They came out of Tech TV, and they also came from another source called All Games Network. To elaborate, basically, this was way back before YouTube. I know G4 came out about 3 years before YouTube was even a thing. And so, YouTube, it took a while for it to, for people to start using it to upload gaming videos and for regular gaming streamers to become a thing there. But G4 inspired an entire generation of people who wanted to create their own content. But a lot of that happened before Tech TV and before G4 even surfaced, and there was a show called All Games Network. They were carried on the Pseudo network. They were scheduled about once a week, and they were streamed over the Pseudo network. And Pseudo had a whole bunch of shows. One of their last programs that they did was streaming the Olympics one year. That was after 2000. So they were mostly big during the late 90s, and they were one of the companies that sadly died because of the .com crash of the late 90s. They did survive into the early 2000s, but they didn't survive long. And their last gasp was the Olympics, streaming the Olympics. I forget what year it was, but that was their final gasp. Now, All Games Network was one of the shows that was being streamed over Pseudo, and they streamed via Real Player. Yeah, this was way back then. This was how far back that was. And this was during an era of people still being on 56K modems and not a lot of people having, cable internet. There wasn't a lot of cable internet back then. It was starting to become a thing, but not a lot of people had really high-speed bandwidth stuff. And there was really no DSL. There was ISBN, some cable in some big markets, and then 56K modem, most everywhere else. So we're not talking about video and really good high fidelity here, if that. So All Games Network, they were the first. As far as I've been able to discern, they were the first big video game streamers on the internet. They were the first. And they covered a range of topics. They talked about games. They were the first to stream live from the E3 show floor. I remember the host, I forget his name. He was also on G4 in the very early years of the channel. He had a show there. It was the All Games Network. It was an All Games Network show where it was basically just him in a talk show. And him and another guy and two other people were on the show floor of E3, and they were pushing around this big cart of equipment that had, batteries on it to keep their equipment going, and they had a computer. They had some early cellular data stuff on there. It was all huge equipment, and it had to all fit on this cart. And so they had this big camera and everything and this capture equipment, because back then this stuff wasn't small and this stuff wasn't cheap. And they were the first people to do this. And they went from booth to booth to booth on the E3 floor. And they were the first ones to do this. That weren't mainstream media guys. That weren't, ABC, NBC, CBS. They were the first ones to do this on the internet. Before other people started doing it with better equipment and smaller cellular modems and things like this. This was really early cutting edge for them. And so they were the first to do this. I remember also watching them playing a tournament with guys from Epic Games where they competed against them in Unreal Tournament. This is not Unreal Tournament 2K4. This was the original Unreal Tournament from '99. And they played with them and actually beat the devs at their own game. So they were somewhat of a big deal. They were the only big streamers at the time that I recall talking about video games in their show full time. IGN was already a thing by this point, well before this online, but it was before they even got into video content. So IGN was a thing. So they were doing articles. This was back when most people were still getting their gaming news from magazines and then later from websites. And then Tech TV was out. Tech TV had a few successful shows. They had the Screensavers with Leo Laporte, which he would go on to create his own media empire for tech stuff that's still going on right now. It's at twit.tv. If you go over there, he's got a bunch of shows and stuff. He was on the Screensavers. He was on some other stuff. He does a nationally syndicated radio show where he takes in calls from people asking, tech questions and tech support questions and things like that. Interesting show. But Tech TV had a few video game focused shows, and they decided Sheldon Adelson was the guy that was the millionaire that started Tech TV, and I think it was originally ZDNet TV when it first launched, and then it was changed to Tech TV. This was during the 90s. So what happened is the guys that were in All Games Network, they were wanting to start their own cable channel called G4. This is where the G4 name came from. And Tech TV had some, fairly popular video game shows, but they wanted to keep the focus on technology stuff like computers, business. They didn't want the video game stuff on there. They thought, it's popular enough that we can create a channel that's specifically about video games. And so they partnered up with the guys from All Games Network who were trying to start their own show. This was in, I believe it was in New York City where they were trying to start this. And they got with them and they created G4 TV. That's how it came about. And G4 TV had Portal. Portal was a sketch comedy show that was somewhat like MST3K, but it was all about MMOs, early social experiences. They were in World of Warcraft, EverQuest, a lot of other MMOs at the time. They were in Second Life, and they had this whole elaborate story arc about these villains and heroes and this guy with characters from video games and talking to them and interacting with them and doing stuff with them. It was all very MST3K like. And they had later they had X-Play. X-Play would become one of their most popular shows. Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb and all them. And then later they would get stuffing like Attack of the Show that would come later in G4. They had Icons. Icons was a great show. If you are aware of the documentary from NoClip, NoClip is a lot like what Icons was, where Icons would be just these short, hour-long documentaries about video games. And they did a great series on the Doom, not the 2016 Doom. They weren't around then. But they did a good thing on the Doom 3. And that was a good series and stuff. They would show clips of games. They had whole sequences that showed clips of games. They had some great video game programming. But, and this was all before YouTube. It was all before YouTube. And some people saw video games that they'd never seen before. I mean, they used to show clips of Rayplay on TV. This was a video game from Japan where you could grope girls and do things with them. It was banned in the US later. You can still find it online. And they did a lot of other video game related stuff. But then at some point, they let a lot of their video game content go. They stopped doing Icons. They stopped doing the gameplay videos that would just be hours and hours of clips of various games. And they focused mainly on Attack of the Show and X-Play. And then the rest of the time was made up with running reruns of some Japanese game show with weird comedy voiceovers. Ninja Warriors and reruns of Cops. And that was their main focus. That was everything that they did. And this was like after YouTube had become a thing. This was when video game streaming started to become big on YouTube. It was really starting to become a thing. Like PewDiePie was starting to come into his own at this point, and you had Captain Sparkles, who was big with Minecraft, and a lot of the people that you know now that are doing YouTube now were really getting their start back then. This was the golden age. This was before the dark times, before all the copyright BS and the algorithm and Google being evil instead of being, the force for good that they used to be. And so when it all came down, crashing down, because they wouldn't focus on the one thing that people were looking for, and that was video game content. So what happened? The internet basically did what the internet does, and it basically satisfied that need. People wanted content. G4 wasn't giving it to them. You know, every so often they would get a episode of X Play, and they would get episodes of Attack of the Show, but there were plenty of channels that were starting to offer much of the same thing, and gamers were changing too. I mean, we didn't need the crude humor of Attack of the Show anymore. Not saying that there's anything wrong with Attack of the Show's humor. No, absolutely. I would never side with the snowflake crowd, saying, "Oh, we didn't need to have." I would never side with the snowflake crowd like what Frosk said about Morgan Webb and them and being there as eye candy. I would never agree with them on that point. They were there for eye candy. They definitely were. And so what happened is people got tired of it. People were wanting less of the entertainment and more of the information. They wanted to know, is this game good? Is this video game interesting? Is it worth me spending my money on it? That's what people were wanting to know. They were getting that maybe from X-Play, maybe not as much. But YouTube was offering more of it. There were more channels doing video game reviews than G4 could do within a 24-hour block. And so they just couldn't compete. On top of the fact that they weren't delivering at all. They should have focused more on video game shows, less on replays, and stop trying to survive off of two programs. Two programs. Really, the demise of G4, the initial demise of G4 was really their own fault. They would not focus on the things that made their network, their show, their channel set apart. They didn't do enough online. They just did not do enough online. And they did not give people the content they were looking for. They were looking for things about games, shows about games, and YouTube was giving them this. And so G4's rating is just sank, and eventually the channel just went defunct. Now, since then, oh, it's exploded. It's like there are hundreds of video game channels now, and the market is saturated, and there are new people coming in. There's us, me, Gamers Bay, who are coming in, and we're the next wave after this. And to say really, it's harder now to get heard. There are so many people doing this. Because back then, when these people were starting out, like back when YouTube was still very new, this all was new. This all was very new stuff. And so it was easier to stand out. But today it's a lot harder to start a channel on YouTube and to get noticed. So you have to do a lot more work to make it work. And I haven't been putting in the work to make it work. And so I'm changing that, though, so that this channel can stand out more. And so over the years, really, everyone's been looking for shows on the internet to basically give them what they were wanting. To give them information on, is this specific game good? What's going on in the gaming industry? What's happening with the game companies? Why are games being launched in really bad unfinished states? Or what's happening with the games that I like? Are we getting DLC? Basic information. They're done with silly skits and crude humor. They just want to know the facts. And G4 wasn't offering that. But channels on YouTube were. If you notice, there aren't really a lot of channels anymore that do the kind of humor that you saw on Attack of the Show or on G4. That do the silly skits. Angry Joe will do these little skits in the beginning of his reviews, but he does those in the beginnings of his reviews and occasionally inside them, but he doesn't do these long, silly skits. And remember Mega 64? Remember that group? They were a comedy group about video games. They were big back in the early 2000s. Where are they now? I mean, I haven't seen anything from them in years. I don't think they're around anymore. I saw them once before an E3, like several years ago, and I was bored. And I think what it is, as I said, gaming community has outgrown them. Outgrown the need for the humor, and we just want the facts. We want the information. We want the news. We don't want silly jokes. We don't need the silly jokes anymore. We just need to know, give us information about the games, man. Shut up about your weird comedy and everything. Just tell us about the games. Tell us if they're good. Let us know what's coming. Let us know what the game companies are working on. Give us the news. Tell us the information. And, unless you've been living under a rock for the past several months, you know that G4 tried to make a comeback. Now, everybody was a little excited because there was a lot of nostalgia for G4 back in the day. And so people thought, hey, maybe G4 does have a place now, in this time period. Maybe they do. Maybe they have something that they can offer. That some channels online just aren't offering. Maybe they have something that they can give back to the community. And so there was that hope. And that hopes were dashed when Frosk opened her big damn feminist mouth. Anyway, what I think really worried me when G4 first started surfacing is the new G4 by Comcast started appearing and Tygra has voiced this. They built up too much. They brought in some celebrity people from wrestling stars. I think they had a basketball star. I don't remember it. I don't care enough to really remember, really. They had some celebrities on the show, and I think Frosk came from, I think she initially came from esports. I think she came from League of Legends, I think she did. I don't remember. I really don't care enough for her to really know one way or the other. But she came from there, and they were basically doing the same thing that they did back in the early G4 TV days. They brought back X-Play to a little extent, and I know that Adam Sussler had returned to YouTube, had come to YouTube, and done some stuff before the new G4 TV even became a thing. I knew he was trying to make a comeback. They couldn't get Morgan Webb back, of course. They couldn't get her back, unfortunately. But I knew there was problems with it when I saw the silly crap that they were doing. I knew, we've outgrown this stuff. We've outgrown the need for it. And we just want the facts. We just want the information. We don't need stupid skits and weird comedy and all this stuff. We want the facts. That's why there's so many channels that just focus on the facts or on, playthroughs, gameplay. And so I felt that G4 would make a comeback, but it wouldn't become this huge thing that a lot of people thought it might become. I thought, it'll come out, people will forget it's there after a while, and it won't become all that relevant, really. And it really didn't. It didn't become all that relevant. I mean, they tried to be. They tried to get sponsors on the they tried to get sponsors to sponsor them. They had like what was it? Pizza Hut. They had Pizza Hut like sponsoring them. They had like a Pizza Hut guy on the show that was a product placement. I think they had some other product placement stuff in the new Attack of the Show and on the other programs that they did. But really, it just wasn't what gamers were looking for. I think that's also what ultimately led to, their downfall. Frosk opening her stupid mouth didn't help. She should have kept her political opinions to herself, political opinions about men to herself, and just did her damn job. But she had to open her stupid mouth and, spread her hatred of men. And that is not what ultimately killed G4. Her running her stupid mouth, very ugly mouth. Does that woman ever brush her teeth? It's like, really? It's like, ew. But she wasn't the ultimate cause of G4's demise. It was the fact that they just didn't understand what gamers were wanting now. G4 was a relic of a bygone era when this kind of media for video games was new. When video games weren't a respected medium. Now they are. Despite all of the attempts by stupid politicians to say that video games cause violence and other stuff to try and demonize games. Despite all that stupidity, video games are a respected form of media. They make more money than Hollywood does, which they definitely do now that most of Hollywood is trying to destroy itself with wokeness. And video games are in a different place than they were back when G4 was something brand new. That was something that had never been seen before, except by those people who used to watch All Games Network. Those who knew even All Games Network even existed. I didn't know a lot of people that knew that they existed back in the day. But there were a lot of people who did watch G4. And they moved on from that to, the various channels on YouTube that now offer way better content, that offer better value for their time. You would rather watch a short video that's about 15 minutes long about your favorite game than sit and watch an hour-long show filled with stupidity before they finally get to what you're wanting to see. And that's what the new G4 did wrong. They didn't focus on what their main focus should have been, is the games. They focused on the stupid, and so the nostalgia effect, which sort of wore off over time, because people were wanting the meat and potatoes, and people wanted the meat and potatoes, but what they were getting was salad. Weird analogy, but they wanted the meat and potatoes, but what they were getting was salad. And Frosk opening her stupid mouth didn't help. I think that was not the ultimate cause of the new G4's death, but it did hasten its demise, because at the end of the day, most gamers are guys. What's this? I didn't grab a pillow. Most gamers are guys. And they don't want to be lectured by some stupid broad who hates men. They don't. They want to know about video games. They want to know about the video game industry. They want to know about the video game companies that they buy the games from. They want information. They don't want some stupid broad saying, "Oh, you're bad men because you want to see Morgan Webb in a bikini." They don't want to be lectured to. They just want information. And that was the problem. Now, that wasn't the ultimate cause of G4's demise, as I said. But it also didn't help G4 any at all, either. In the end, G4 TV was a dinosaur of a bygone era that will never come back. They needed to adapt. They needed to look at what other sources, what other creators were doing, and tailor their programming based on that. They should have done that, but they didn't. And they paid the price. And they allowed a crazy feminist to run her mouth. They played, the drama game on Twitter. They attacked their fans. And rather than supporting their fans and agreeing with their fans and basically telling Frost to sit down and shut up, or getting rid of her after her rant, which is what really caused a lot of people to leave. People who were on the fence about leaving G4, about giving up on the channel. Her little rant, the one that you see repeated a lot online, is what really started their downfall. What really triggered the whole landslide for G4. As I said, she wasn't the ultimate cause, but what her not being able to keep her mouth shut ultimately is what did lead to it accelerating. And the fact that they continued to attack their fans rather than, support them and say, she wasn't supposed to say this. She put her politics in this instead of doing her job and talking about the games and everything. She didn't do her job. And now I'm rambling. In the end, G4 coming back was a nice idea. It was an interesting interesting idea. It was, if it were done right, it probably would do well. But they didn't do it right. They focused too much on the stupid, not enough on what people were really wanting to get out of G4. People didn't watch G4 shows like X-Play and stuff for the stupid skits. Those were funny back in the day, but nowadays, if we want to watch stupidity, there's plenty of channels for that. For stupid fun. Or, video game related comedy stuff. There's plenty of channels for that. But, they were wanting something that was a better value than what a lot of channels on YouTube could offer. And G4 just didn't offer that. They just didn't offer that. And so they're gone again. But that's not the end of it. That's not the end of it. After everything, they're still ranting and raving. They're still blaming the fans. They're still screaming. I think I recently saw something on the quartering about Frosk attacking Henry Cavill, and it didn't go well. It's like they can't keep their mouth shut. I think Adam Sessler has just gone completely bonkers. From my understanding, that's not the first time he's actually done that. He has, he's something of a, he runs his mouth, from what I understand. He does it quite often. So, ultimately, I think really, I think G4 ultimately was bringing it back, trying to make it just as it was when it was on TV was a bad idea. A lot's changed since then. Things needed to be different. There were plenty of channels offering what G4 offered back in the day, and they offered better. What gamers are looking for was radically different than what they are looking for back then. And they were a dinosaur. They came back trying to be the same thing. They tried to ride that nostalgia wave. And it worked for them for a while. Until Frosk opened her mouth. And so Comcast invested millions in setting this all up and getting all of this working. And now they're out all those millions. As I said, it's not just because of Frosk. It's not just because of her. It is really a lack of vision by the people running the show. Where they should have looked at, as I said before, they should have looked at what creators on YouTube were giving people. What were they offering? What were they offering? And say, hey, what could we produce that they're not offering? What could we do better than what those channels were offering? They didn't ask those questions. They just tried to ride the nostalgia train. And it ultimately cost them everything. In the aftermath of this, a lot of the employees at G4 really got the raw deal. They did not learn that they didn't have a job from the company. They had to find out on social media. They had to find out from news articles that they didn't have a job the next day. And that's typical of a lot of... I know I really don't want to inject... I didn't want to inject too much of the politics into this. But that kind of thing. Just having no respect for the employees. Just shutting down, not letting them know that they don't have jobs. And them having to find out from social media or other news sources that they suddenly don't have work the next day is an extremely liberal thing to do, and it's a scumbag thing to do. It's a scumbag thing to do. And what's infuriating is these people act like they have the moral high ground. That's the infuriating thing about it. They act like they have the moral high ground, yet they just left all these people high and dry. That they thought they just let them go. Without notifying them, without letting them know, hey, you don't come in tomorrow, you don't have a job anymore because we shut everything down. That's not moral high ground, that's scumbag stuff. What the hell? What are you doing? I mean, people are screaming at... people are screaming at Elon Musk for letting half of Twitter go. Even saying, they're going to sue him. They can't. Know why? Because he's giving them 90 days severance. Basically, they're technically not... When that happens, they're technically not fired. They're just not allowed to come into the office, and they get 90 days of pay to satisfy the law in California. Why aren't they screaming about suing G4 for doing the same thing but not giving notice? They didn't give 90 days notice. They just shut everything down and fired everybody and didn't give anybody any notice whatsoever. They just, they had to find out via Twitter that they didn't have a job the next day. What the hell is up with that? And then they want to yell at Elon Musk, who at least had the decency to give those employees 90 days severance. They still get a paycheck for the next 90 days. So they'll have money to take care of their families until they can get another job somewhere. And the only reason why even they were let go is because crazy activists went and demanded that advertisers pull their ads off of Twitter, saying that all these changes had been made to the content moderation when they weren't. When he hadn't changed a thing. But they went and lied to these advertising companies and got them to pull their ads. Now, he was willing to play nice with these people. But they went and did this. So he decided, you know what? I'm tired of playing nice. I'm tired of being the nice guy. Twitter was going to be a different subject in the show. All this stuff grinds my gears, and I really didn't want to drag the politics in here. Anyway, getting back to the topic. Video game community doesn't need G4 anymore. We've moved on. Back in the day, the humor was nice. This was something that we hadn't seen before, which was somewhat mainstream. It was on cable TV. Somewhat mainstream programming that talked about video games, that we actually had a show that we could watch on cable TV, a network on cable TV with shows that talked about video games, which was something we'd never seen before, unless you were one of the few people who watched All Games Network back in the day. It was a new thing. But this is a different era. This is a different time. And times changed. G4 didn't evolve. G4 went extinct for a second time. And for very much the same reasons. Similar reasons. First time they they didn't adapt to the changing market, and they, instead of improving their video game content, they focused on two shows. They tried to ride on the coattails of two shows that were their most popular, and then filled the rest of the time with reruns of stuff. Cops and Ninja Warrior. I was like, why? People want to see video game content. And then content creators filled that gap. They provided that service. They offered what they were looking for. And then they came back and they started doing the same old crap again. And it was fun watching. We liked the nostalgia. We liked seeing our favorite people, Kevin Pereira and them come on, begin the show again. But over time, it just got boring. If we want to see silly skits, we'll go watch some other channel. We wanted gaming infamy. We wanted gaming programming, the likes of which we hadn't seen online, off of other channels, and we didn't get it. That's what ultimately ended G4. The woke shit didn't help. The woke shit made it worse. G4 probably would have lasted longer if the woke shit wasn't there. But the woke shit was there, and the woke shit just made everything worse. And it hastened their demise. It wasn't the ultimate cause, but it accelerated it significantly. Significantly. And so they just didn't do anything to be relevant. They didn't do anything to really justify their existence. They were just there for the nostalgia factor, and that's it. They didn't try to stand out. They didn't try to, innovate. That's the word I was looking for. Innovate. They didn't do that. And so they're gone again. And all the other BS that's happened since is just, flotsam. Anyway, this is the first of a new series of shows that I'm going to be doing in this format, where I'll just be on here talking, and I'll have different settings. Won't just be here. This is the Black Barn in VR chat. I won't be just here. I'll be all over the place in here. And so it'll be just me talking completely off the cuff. No pre-scripting. Just me giving my raw, untempered, unfiltered, completely unfiltered, because I don't care who I offend. I could care less. If you're if you're offended, too bad. But this is the way the show's going to go from day forward. It's going to happen every Friday, 10 p.m. Central. I'm going to be streaming from here. and look forward to the next episode. I'm going to be talking about a lot of subjects, a lot of things going on in and around the gaming industry. We're going to have a similar show over on Gamers Bay with Mike TheZorch, the host of other shows here on Zorch Central, and he's going to be talking about stuff happening in and around the gaming industry. We might occasionally have subjects that overlap, but not really. Most of the subjects that we talk about will be very different. He's going to be covering a lot of other stuff. But I think what I wanted to say about G4, I've finally gotten off my chest. That, I was happy to see them back. I was happy to see G4 finally return. But in the end, I can understand why they died. And it has nothing to do with Frosk running her mouth. She helped, but it had nothing to do with that. Anyway, when I thank everybody who came on to watch, I don't see anybody in chat today, but you know what? This is the first show in the series, and I'm certain this is going to improve over time. I had some technical difficulties at the very beginning, which is why the stream came out late. We've been having some technical difficulties around here lately. I mean, we had tornadoes yesterday. And so next time, I will see you, probably in a different venue, and talking about a different subject, and focusing on games, stuff happening in and around the gaming industry. I have been the professor. Thank you for watching, and it's only going to get better from here. I promise. I'm not going to be... I'm pretty rambling today because I'm not very focused right now because I've had to fight with some technical issues before starting this stream. But I'll be more focused next time. Alright? Thanks for watching. I'll see you all next time.